Howdy, howdy, everybody. How are you doing this evening? Something a little different tonight. I got Keith on, Keith Spillman from up in North Carolina. And Greg and Brian were not able to make it on for the stream team tonight. So I decided to go ahead and rock and roll a little bit with it. And Keith was gracious enough to join me last minute. So here we are. Keith, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, doing fine, Bruce. I appreciate the invitation. Yeah, I was getting ready to kick back and watch y'all tonight anyway, so didn't mind a bit coming on.
Worked out good for you then.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I like coming on, and I prefer, especially on a lot of these live streams, to have a guest. And so I just don't. I mean, I've done a few by myself, and it's okay if I have a specific topic I I kind of think about ahead of time. But I'm just going to go and kind of wing it as we do sometimes. Of course, we do have a topic tonight, but kind of I'd like to have someone to bounce ideas off of and to share with. So it's always good to have someone else on here. Keith, tell us a little bit about yourself. I think most people on here may know you already, but if not, just let us know a little bit about what your operation's like, where you're at, kind of your history of the bees. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us an introduction here.
Hey, well, yeah, I'm Keith Spillman. My YouTube channel is Half Tracks and Honeybees. The half tracks comes from the fact that I like to restore old military vehicles, and I've got an old 41 half track I restored and a 55 Army Jeep, and we like to do veterans events and parades and school stuff and all kinds of things with the military vehicles. Teach kids a little bit about history. But I've been retired for about 5 years now. Me and my wife retired the same day back in 2021. So we're having fun here on the farm. I guess I've been messing with bees. I didn't realize it. I looked the other day, and I actually got my first hive 20 years ago. So that time flies, man. It don't seem like that, but I didn't have a clue when I got that first hive. A friend gave it to me, and I made probably a thimble full of honey, and then they died, and then I bought some more, and they died, and I did that for a few years, and then kind of got out of it for a little bit. Got back into it probably 10 years ago. Did okay, but really, I tell folks, I think I only had a clue what I was doing for probably about the past 6 years. When you finally get that, you get that first hive through the winter, then it's like, you're Tarzan. Then, you get that, you overwinter a hive, and then you're ready to roll. At that point, I was able to go. I can't remember the exact numbers, 1, 2, 4, 9, 18, and then you can just kind of do what you want to do once you kind of figure that part of it out. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, the growing your business. So, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm located in I call it the eastern foothills of North Carolina. So we're not really into Piedmont. We're up a little bit towards the mountains a little bit more. So not anything like Ricky Rourke. He's way up in the mountains. He's over 3,000 feet. We're a little less than 1,000 foot here. So we're not the mountains, but we're not. It's not flat either. So that's kind of our story here.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'd like to recognize some folks in the chat here now that we've got going for a couple of minutes. I can't recognize everybody, but I do recognize a lot of familiar names in here. Dennis, Cheryl, right here in Alabama. We got, of course, we got you. We got Clay Bunner. We got Glade from Utah Bee Man in here. Kathy Keith 3720. Yeah, I'm not going to try and talk about everybody in here. I just can't do it. But anyway, just welcome everybody in here tonight. Brian and Greg are much better about recognizing everybody. We appreciate you being here. And I see some new names that I may not recognize. And so it's great to have you in here. I see a lot of familiar names, and hopefully we'll have more hop on. I see Eric in here, Spirit of Toad. He's real close to me down here. He's just across the river over there into Georgia. And he's actually helped me. He came over and helped me one time with my bees and was in a video back probably 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, got a great group in here. Appreciate you being here, and hopefully the numbers will grow as we go along. But we do have a topic tonight. But before we move on with the topic, Keith, tell us a little bit about you, what's going on with your operation right now. I know it's kind of weird because it seems like now down here we kind of have an early spring, spring-like weather. the crazy thing is we had the bees were looking really good. If you've watched the channel, and they've done really well this spring so far. Made early splits, and then for about 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's almost like someone just turned off whatever little nectar was trickling in. It was just like a dearth, like completely crazy. I went out to I actually made some splits 2 or 3 couple of weeks ago, I think it was, and I went and got some. I had a friend, Tyler Walker, had some cells available, so I just went and I bought 30 cells from him. So I made 30 splits, and I was going to feed him, of course. And I left my feeding setup, which is a 275-gallon IBC tote, a container, and my everything there in the bee yard. I came out the next morning, and it was covered in bees. Any syrup that had leaked onto the tote, the bees were all over it. They were just all over the place. It was kind of almost, they were kind of robby. It was kind of crazy. So you could tell we were in a bit of a dearth then. But I went out last weekend, and it seemed like, or last week, just a few days later, and it seemed like it wasn't anything like that. The bees were much more calm. So it's amazing how there's not really a big flow coming in here of any kind right now, but there must be a little something that's kind of kicked in. And I haven't been in my bees much the last few days. I've gone in them and done some things, but I haven't done a lot of observation of what's going on in nature. When I was in them last week, we went out of town this week, and we went up to North Carolina, not far from you. My son-in-law's about to be deployed to, we don't know where exactly, but he's about to be deployed. He's a Black Hawk pilot. He's with the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg. And so he's going to be deployed wherever they're sending him. And so we went up there to visit them before he leaves. And so my daughter and two little grandbabies and paid. And so it was awesome. But that's why I was trying to get a bunch of stuff done last week during the week after work. And so last week was just nuts. But I got some things done, and maybe there'll be a video or two coming out about all that. But anyway, so that's where we're at down here. And so I guess you guys up there you started stacking some honey supers, haven't you, Keith?
Oh yeah. Crazy me. I did a video about it. The crazy beekeeper putting the rotating boxes and putting honey supers on way earlier than folks think I should be. But I run all mediums, and the bottom box coming out of winter on them, when you run all mediums, is usually pretty empty. So coming out of winter, I always rotate the boxes, and then if there's something going on, I'll go ahead and put the supers on. So I had my supers on early March. We have an early flow here that I like to try to catch: maples, henbit, dead nettle. Later on, it morphs into red buds, maybe some alders. A lot of that's kind of fading right now, but the tulip poplars are popping, and the bees, they really never slowed down once they you can tell when the nectar flow is going. I usually put sugar water out on the deck about every day, and you can tell just as soon as the flow starts, all the plates are empty. There's no bees. It just sits there. So I know game's on when that happens. So yeah, they're flying like bullets out of the hive right now, and the flow has definitely started up here. Now the big flow hadn't kicked in yet. The poplars haven't bloomed. That's the star of the show up here for me. So that'll probably be week or so away, week and a half, something like that. I get my binoculars out on the deck and look at the tops of the trees to see what's going on. You can tell you're a bee nerd when you're looking at trees with binoculars, and you're not looking for critters. You're looking at leaves and blossoms and blooms. So
That's awesome.
But
Yeah.
but it works. You need to kind of know what's going. You try to stay ahead of the bees. I went through all the hives this week, Monday and Tuesday, just checking, make sure the queens had plenty of room, seeing if there was something in the supers, which there was. I ended up having to put another super on 3 or 4 hives, put another brood box on one of the hives. I like to keep my hives big and fat to make lots of honey. I don't really want to split my production hives unless I go into them and find a cap swarm cell. And usually if I find a cap cell, I'll go ahead and split that hive, because from what I've seen, once they start capping cells, it's over. They're going to go. So I did have to split one of the hives yesterday, but they're looking good. The buildup is the timing's going good. You try to time it so you got the most bees in the hive about the time the big flow hits, and it looks like that's going to time out pretty good this year. So we shall see. We shall see. You never know till it's in the bucket.
Yeah, this past weekend on Friday, actually, we left on Saturday. So on Friday, I went out, did kind of what you're talking about. I went through. Now I've split mine pretty hard, so a lot of them have a lot of population in them still, but a lot of them are still working on trying to dry out some new frames I put in there. So I want to make sure I'm not stacking honey supers on a hive that doesn't even have the frames drawn out in the bottom, in the second box or whatever. And a lot of them have those frames mostly drawn out. And so I kind of mixed and matched, kind of like what you described. You said you put, a few supers on some that needed a second super. That's kind of what I did. The ones that I feel like needed it. And I don't put a queen excluder on there to start off with. I usually go back in a couple of weeks and put the queen excluder on. I'll let them start working those honey supers. Now, of course, the queen may get up in there and lay a few eggs, but by the time the honey is ready to harvest, they've emerged and they backfilled all that space with honey. And people who don't want any brood at all in their honey supers don't probably want to do that. But I've just found, for me, it seems like it works good to let them kind of work them for a few days and kind of get up there and get them cleaned out and used to it. I did have a few, actually. I had a few of my supers that had some wax moth damage in them, and so a lot of them were still usable. But the bees will clean that out and clean it up, and give them a chance to get there and do all that. It's crazy how fast the bees jump on that comb when you put it in there, though. Literally, you stick it on there, and within just seconds, they're up there and they're starting to clean it, work with it, mess with it, and so it is pretty cool to see that. But we'll see. I'm going to go out this weekend and just kind of peek in on them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But probably go ahead and throw some queen excluders in this weekend or next weekend, and then it's going to be game on. Our privet is our first really kind of decent flow, I think, where they put a lot of honey in there to speak of. That's coming up here in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. Lisa, Grammy midwife, said that the Yalpon holly is blooming. I think I know what that is, but I'm not sure. I'm not when it comes to knowing all the different flowers and what's blooming when, all I know is honey's coming in, nectar's coming in, or it's not. I mean, the big flows, I know it's obvious. And sometimes I'll look up, like I have a one bee yard. It's a bee yard I manage for a friend. He actually pays me to do it. It's a Honey Hill Farm. And he has these 2 or 3 gigantic tulip poplar trees literally right above the hives. I had no idea when we put the hives there, but you can go there during, when you're like, what is all this nectar coming in? It's not exactly when anything else at this time, just kind of between, like, you got the privet, the tulip poppers kind of in there a little bit, kind of mixes in between and kind of ties in with so it's not at the exact same time, but I'm like, none of my other bees seem to be bringing much in. But then you look up and you see in that one spot, that one location, man, they're just pouring in the tulip poplar, and the trees they're massive. They're 70, 80 feet tall, probably. They're huge. And you can see all the little blooms up there. And then you can see the petals. That might be the first way I realized first time I realized there was tulip poplar was when I saw the petals falling on the hives after it was dying out. So,
yeah.
Anyway, but I'm glad things are going well. It's kind of interesting how you guys are so far north of us, but you're maybe even a little ahead of us as far as honey production goes. It's just kind of like these little pockets in the country. Certain times you're a little bit behind us, but right now you're a little ahead of us. So it's kind of crazy. But yeah, so let's just kind of dive into the topic, and maybe you could talk to us, Keith, a little bit about how you decided, how you kind of grew. I know you say you've been in it 20 years, so organically, kind of how did you grow the operation? How did you determine kind of how much you wanted to do, how many bees you wanted to have, and kind of reach that goal? Tell us your story a little bit about that, kind of how you got to that point.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, it was just a matter of just having a hive of bees, and trying to figure out how to keep the ladies alive. The honest truth is I didn't put as much effort into it as I should have. I didn't go to any classes. 20 years ago, YouTube wasn't a thing. So just kind of on my own. Didn't really have a mentor, but I really didn't start building up, I guess, until about 5 years ago, something like that, when I actually started making more honey than I could sell just off of Facebook. and I had to start thinking about doing farmers markets and that sort of thing to sell the amount of honey I was making. Now I've always, well, not always, for many years early on, I was buying bees. I was buying packages of bees. I bought some nukes. If I lost a queen, I'd go buy a queen. Um, but that didn't, like I say, I didn't have the knowledge or the experience to go along with that. So it was a lot of really wasted money until I really got to the point where I could uh, do a good walkaway split. That was kind of when the light bulb went off. You get them through the winter, and then you can figure out how to split one and get two or three through the winter, and then here we go. Um, so for the past, I guess the past 5 years, I hadn't bought any bees. I haven't bought any queens. I haven't bought any bees. I've done all walkaway splits, and I've just grown that way, as well as swarms, catching swarms. Some of my swarms and some of other folks's are feral swarms. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but um, I went through a couple of really swarmy years where I caught lots of my own swarms. That was some fun times. I enjoy catching a good swarm, but it's not the most productive thing to do when you're trying to make some honey. But last year I got up to nothing like you've got, Bruce. I got up to like 37 hives, I believe. And that was just more work than I wanted to do with the bees. I try my best to keep beekeeping very fun. That's one of my things I preach, keep beekeeping fun. I find that I'm much happier in the 20s than I am in the 30s, and even in the 20s, I made a lot of honey last year. I made about 2,500 pounds of honey, something over 200 gallons, 210, something like that, on about 17 or 18 production hives. Had an incredible year. It was just crazy. Not expecting to do that every year. Wasn't expecting to do that last year. It just kept coming. But yeah, right now I'm kind of in a. I'm not saying I don't want to grow any, but I don't want to grow a lot. Now I do help about. I've got 6 other people that I help with their hives. A couple of Hive for Heroes folks, and the rest are just local friends. Now that's where I get to do my splits at. Is for them, because all of them except for one fella. One fella's got 2 hives and he don't want no more than 2 hives. So I end up having to pull out his and bring it back to my bee yard, and I make hives with his brood. So that's kind of I guess that's a neighborhood split. But but some of the folks, I had a lady with 4 hives. She wanted to go to 6. I had a fellow with 6 hives. We got him to 11. Another fella that had 1 got him to 2. So so I'm doing splits for the folks that I'm helping. But once again, I try to manage all of their hives the same way I manage mine, and that's the way I teach folks. No, you don't have to do it my way, but this works for me. So they run all mediums, which makes it nice if I need to get them some equipment. I've got the same thing that they've got, so it's easy to get them equipment. But yeah, I'm doing all walkaway splits for them. So we've got a bunch in progress right now. I guess it'd be 5, 7, probably about 12 splits going for them right now. And the way I do my walkaway is once I do a walkaway, I do not mess with a brood box for about 30 days. Now, if there's a super on top of it, which, a hive will make honey without a queen, because a lot of your nurse bees don't have anything to do. They might as well be foragers. But yeah, you'll have a honey making hive and find out it's queenless. But I don't mess with the brood box for 30 days. If you count all the days up, by the time they find out they're queenless, 16 days to make a queen, a couple of days to mature. She goes out to mate, comes back, goes through the eggs, larvae, capped. In 30 days, I should be able to go in that hive and I've got capped brood. I don't have to squint, look around or whatever. I open the hive, and if I got capped brood, we're gold. It worked. So I try to do things simple, and but you're always anxious when you start opening hives, looking for to see if the split worked. That's kind of fun. I look forward to that, and got a pretty good batting average. I treat my splits also kind of like like when you're raising queens. When I do a split, I'll give them pollen patties and shake in a whole bunch of bees, um, and and really load the hive up good when I do the split, and I have good success. So, but
Awesome.
that's kind of how I do it.
And do you worry about finding the queen, or it's just a true walk away split where you just make sure there's brood in both boxes and pull it away?
Now, when I'll do it two different ways. I'll either just go in and look for the queen on the frames I'm interested in, as far as the ones with the eggs and the young larva, to try my best to make sure and not move the queen, which sometimes you miss her and you move her and your split's actually not in the box you thought it was, or your queenless hive isn't the hive you thought it was. I'll do that, or I'll just do what some folks call a dirty split. If I go into a hive and I've got two mediums, both with eggs and young larvae, I'll just start a split with one of the mediums. And I don't know which one the queen's in.
Yeah.
And I've always called that a dirty split. I don't know if that's the right word for it or not, but
Yeah, that makes sense. I call it a true walk away where you don't even worry about the queen. But
yeah.
that kind of, I guess,
Mhm.
in your eyes, a walk away is you kind of are mindful of where she's at, or you try to be.
Mhm.
You look for her, but to me, what I call a true walk away is just you got 3 boxes, or
Mhm.
like I did one a video years ago. I had a triple deep stacked nuke, and I just took 3 boxes, made sure there was a brood in each one, and I dropped one right there where it was, and took the other 2 up to the farm, and
Mhm.
had no idea where the queen was, and ended up with three hives out of it, and they did
Yeah.
okay. And so I just checked them a few weeks later and made sure there was
Mhm.
queen in there, and they all worked. And so
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if I ever knew which one was really. I guess you could tell which one had more brood in it. And when I checked them, that was probably the one with the original queen, but I don't think I even looked. I have to go back and watch. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but they
No,
do
the
work. I know people can worry about it, and I haven't done a lot of those. I've tried to be. What I'm trying to do is just improve my genetics as far as attitude. My bees have been pretty spicy, and so I have brought in a fair amount of queens from other people. Mated queens is what I've been doing, and I love the queens I'm getting, and I'm getting to the point now to where I'm actually thinking about setting up a queen ring setup tomorrow. I was going to do it today, but it was raining, and I was going to do this video tonight, so I may try and do it, but just setting up maybe a cloakboard type setup. But
Mhm.
the easiest way to do it is the walk away, and it seems to work pretty well. And if you don't have a great queen, or if it doesn't take, you can just combine it back, or you can
Mhm.
you can figure out something to do. But it is amazing. I think Mr. Ed just does walkaways, if I'm not mistaken. He just kind of pulls them and sets them up.
Mhm.
So it's an easy way to increase make your increases. In my case, I didn't really I I kind of like you, Keith. I got my first couple of hives, and I was just thinking, I just want to have bees. I think it's kind of a cool thing to do. But it didn't take long before I knew that I wanted to grow. And I'm kind of a racehorse. Like I just can't. Like I'm all in. I can't dabble in something. I don't do good at dabbling in anything I do. If it's something I enjoy, I dabble in a lot of things that I'm not super excited about. But if I find something I'm really excited about, I just have to go all the way in. I have to be all the way in, and just my goal pretty quickly was to get up to 100 colonies. Though I had no clue how to do that, or what that even meant, what that was even like. And I kept trying, and my problem was, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this tonight was because I hope people don't duplicate what I did in some ways. I really like where I'm at now, and I love the process it took to get here. But I had a lot of difficulty, heartache, and failure on the road to get to this point. We probably all do, but I was just because I kept pushing. It's like if anyone who's familiar with a horse, you have a horse that needs to be broke, or if you have a just a really hyper horse. You put the bit in its mouth, it's just pulling constantly on that bit, just always going. You can hold them back. You can hold them back with the reins, but that horse is always pulling against you, trying to go. And a horse that's more reasonable, maybe not quite as excitable, you can kind of relax that bit, and the horse sometimes can actually do more in the long run because they're not always using every muscle they have trying to pull against you. But I'm like the horse with the bit in his mouth. I had this thing I wanted to do, a place I wanted to be, and I pulled so hard that I had a lot of setbacks and failure. I lost a lot of hives over the years. I still lose some, but I learned a lot along the way. And And what I think, I don't know, Keith, you might agree with this. If you want to grow your operation, get your first few hives that you have and make sure you kind of understand, you feel comfortable, and you feel like you're skilled enough to take care of those hot colonies before you try to double or triple your operation. I think that you start off maybe, I mean, just use a number. I would say initially I was probably a 4 to 6 hive person. That's what I was. That's what I had in the first couple of years. And I tried to grow. I think I got up to 13 or something a year or two in. And I built up. And then I got to a certain point to where it was like 30 or 40 hives or something like that. I can't remember the numbers. Unfortunately, I didn't keep records to see how many I had every year, but I got to a certain point to where that seemed like that's all I could do. Like I couldn't really increase past that. I could split all like crazy, but I just couldn't keep them alive.
Mhm.
And then I kind of got to the point where I could just do more. And now I'm at that point to where about 100 to 150 is where I kind of tend to stay. I can't seem to get above that and maintain. Although this year, for the first time, this past, I'm gonna say, starting probably now, back a year, say this year, this past year, and maybe the year before that. Actually, the last year is when I really kind of got into a little bit of a rhythm. That would have been what, 2024. I got in a rhythm where I had a record crop with honey. That's the first year too that I think I kept my bees back and didn't send any off to pollination. So I kept them here, worked with them, tried to stay on top of them. Still had some issues, still lost a few, but kind of figured out got a little more efficient with them.
Mhm.
And then this past year I had another record crop. And this year, even though I've made more splits probably than ever before this early in the year, excuse me, and I may have more colonies now. I've never sold. I've sold 26 nukes, I think, and they were in really good shape. I made 26 nukes to sell. I made 30, but two of them I kept. Two of them were duds, and then the rest of them I sold.
Mhm.
I've never sold that many nukes before, and I still have more colonies than I've ever had before. And so I'm starting to get maybe a little bit more efficient with it. So I didn't really have a plan as far as this is how many colonies I want to get. This is what I envision my operation being. This is where I want to be. I just kind of have let the beekeeping operation grow organically as I've been able to maintain. And as the market too, if I would have had 11,000 pounds of honey 7 or 8 years ago, I would have absolutely lost my mind. I've got I think I don't know where I can pull it up, but I made probably 20, I don't know, it's probably maybe 2018, 2019 or something like that. I had like what, 10 5 gallon buckets of honey, and something, and if even that many buckets. And I was freaking out, like, how am I going to sell this honey? I was just freaking out about it. Now I go through that many, like in a couple, a month, probably at least a month. It's just crazy depending on the month. But I just, your ability to grow, or your ability to maintain, kind of grows naturally. I see Ian's in here.
Mhm.
One thing about, the bees are going to let you know how many you can have, because if you can I could grow to 300 this year if I wanted to, but I would only end up with like 100 to 150 because I can't keep up with them. Right? I don't have the equipment, don't have the ability to do that. And Ian had a video a few years ago. I know I've told him about this, but it's called the 10-day rule.
Mhm.
And it's just a phenomenal video. It's one of my favorites that he's done. It's only like 5 or 6 minutes long, but it talks about a concept of it probably applies in anything you do, farming, beekeeping, a lot of things in life. But if you have a task to accomplish, and Ian, I might be teaching this a little bit wrong, but if you have a task to accomplish with the bees, you need to get it all done within 10 days. Otherwise you'll get behind and you get in trouble. And that's kind of how it is. That's been something I've kind of tried to, I haven't gone specifically to that rule, but I do know, like, there's a certain amount of days. Yeah, he said it applies to the entire farm, but I do know that if you get behind, with whatever you're doing, if you get behind here in Alabama, if you get behind with the honey harvest, if you don't get all your honey in within the time it needs to be, you'll start having issues with hive beetles as the bees begin to retreat back, and when the dearth hits. If you don't get the feeding in when you need to, you'll have bees starve and things like that. And so that's just kind of how it works. If you, for example, if you're making queens and you don't get the queens out and get them placed before when you need to, they'll emerge and murder each other. So it's just things. Bees don't wait for anyone. They're gonna progress and move forward. Mother Nature doesn't wait for you. So if you have too many bees, you can't manage them, then you're gonna lose some. You're gonna lose and come right back. You're gonna be able to maintain whatever you're capable of maintaining. and the bees are going to teach you what that is pretty quickly. And so that's kind of a cool
Yep.
rule. But
Yep.
anyway, so I guess you've already talked about what your favorite type of split to do is. What kind of advice would you have for someone that is just maybe getting started, or just Eric? Eric Spirito said Bruce just dropped the cuss word hive beetle. I'm like, I didn't think I cussed. I saw what he said there. Yeah, that is I hate those things. They are the devil's spawn for sure. Hive beetles are the worst. Mites are bad. The hive beetles is just the grossest thing when they slime out a hive. For those who may not be familiar up north, they are nasty little devils. But so what kind of advice would you have, maybe Keith, for someone either just getting started or who wants to up their game a little bit? What
Mhm.
kind of advice would you give them to help them know what to do, how to kind of figure out where they want to go with their beekeeping operation, and kind of what kind of planning or thoughts should they have to avoid some of the pitfalls that you've had and maybe that I've described as well?
Yeah. Yeah. First thing that pops in my head is kind of some of the points that you made. Don't try to grow too fast. Um, it's just like anything. Learning how to drive a car, you don't go straight from your learner's permit to a race car. Building engines, you don't go from building a four banger to building a top fuel dragster motor. Um, there's a lot of knowledge and experience that comes along with everything. You can have a lot of knowledge about something, but until you get your hands on it and learn that everything is not like the books say it is, 100% of the time, um, you've always got more to learn. But the biggest thing when I see somebody post in Facebook, they're always bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Hey guys, I'm thinking about getting some bees. What do you think the first thing is I should do? I always just say, before you spend $1 on bees and equipment, spend it on education. Um, because I know buying equipment and bees before you know what you're doing, bees are going to die. Uh, that's just the way it is. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to tend to them. You don't know how to prepare them for winter. Now, if you're in a place where you don't have a severe winter, you might be able to get some bees through. But normally, it's all about knowledge and experience. So get a little knowledge under your belt. Buy some books. There's some good books out there. I always point folks towards that. Beekeeping for Dummies is a great little book, easy to read, got a lot of good information. That new book that Kamen and Blake have out, I know some folks that's got that, and they really enjoy that book. It's an easy read. So just learn a little bit before you jump in with both feet. You get two hives. Two hives is better than one, and get them through the winter. Get them through that first winter before you start thinking about, I'm going to split, I'm going to make honey, and I'm going to do this and that. Keep your bees alive. That's the first thing. If your bees are dead, they don't split very well and they make very little honey. So you got to keep them alive. But and go slow and watch your cash flow. If you're not careful, once you get into it, you figure out how to keep them alive, and then you discover fishing for bees and start throwing up swarm traps and start catching some swarms. And I wore the road out between here and Miller Bee Supply up in North Wilkesboro getting wood that one year because I had so many swarms. I'd go up there and Lord, buy 10 boxes and 100 frames and tops and bottoms and think I was good to go forever. And Lord, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I'd be back up the road again. So, yeah, don't let your dreams overrun your wallet. So keep
That's
things
for sure.
under control. And you don't have to have every gadget and gizmo that's out there. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
if you got two hives, you really don't need a 20 frame extractor. Um, buy your little 4 frame hand crank, and then once you get to the point where you're wearing out both arms forward and backwards, then look at getting you a small electric. So you don't have to do it all at once.
I tend to agree with everything you said. I think 2 to 4 colonies to start off with is a good number.
Mm-hmm.
And my only time I went into debt, to myself to buy. The only time I spent money and went in the red to buy bees was the first few colonies I got before I didn't have any ability to make money. But and I did buy a few queens and stuff the first couple of years as I didn't listen to my mentor. He told me, look, if you don't find the queen, if you don't see eggs, he's like, and I've told this story on here before. He said, just wait a couple of weeks. You probably got a queen in there. They've either probably swarmed or replaced her. And so I'd be like, no, David, no, I need a queen. I know I'm queenless. He kind of chuckled and sell me a queen. And I think back then it was $25 is what he charged me, 20 or $25. And he'd just say, okay. And he'd give me, so there's no telling how many queens I got killed just because I put them in there. And that new little queen, one of them, they killed each other. But finally, a couple of years in, I decided to listen to what he told me. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to wait and see. And I had no idea. This tells you how I went in like both guns ablazing. And I think it was a year, maybe even 2 years in. I didn't understand what milk brood was. Remember, I called him one night at a hive I thought was queenless, and I said, "There's this milky stuff in the bottom of the cells. What is that?" He's like, "Well, that's your new. That means your eggs are just hatched. That means you got a queen in there. A queen had just started laying." And what I've learned is that, man, probably it seems like 90% of the time, if you think you're queenless, you just wait a couple of weeks, you come back, and you got a queen in there. And sometimes it's a beautiful sheet of brood. And I also catch them sometimes where I go back in the hives, and you just see a tiny little patch of that milk brood in there where they've just started to emerge, that milky looking stuff. That new little queen's getting started. You come back a week or two later, and you just got 2 or 3 frames of beautiful sheets of brood in there. So patience is another thing I've learned over the years. I think is very important. But I tend to agree, like, get to where you feel pretty comfortable and good at just managing 4 to 6 colonies, whatever you start off with. Make sure you can manage that first, and then try to build up to, maybe if your next goal is say 15 or 20, do that. Make sure you're good at that. And then before you know it, you'll get. There's a quote I found. I just looked it up here. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, quote, "That which we persist in doing becomes easier for us to do, not that the nature of the thing itself has changed, but that our power to do so is increased." And so that's kind of what happens. The task is the same, it's equally as hard, but it's just our ability to be able to accomplish that task becomes, it's increased because we've practiced, we've learned, and we've become more skilled at it. It's that way with anything we do in life, whether it be a work skill, whether it be sports, whether it be anything we do, hobbies, anything, beekeeping, whatever. You just got to do it and practice it and work at it. Now, I'm giving this advice, but I didn't do that. I just jumped in full speed ahead. I was out catching swarms. Like, I went up to Abbeville one night. It's about 30 minutes away. These people called me and hey, we got a swarm. Do you want it? So I drove up there. It was dark outside. The swarm was just a few feet off the ground. And I caught it. But bees at night don't respond the way they do in the daytime. And I sat up there waiting for those bees to go in that box. Had no idea, and I think it ended up being okay. But I was catching swarms. I was trying to make splits. I was just going everywhere, running all over the place, all over creation. I would drive to go catch swarms all over the place, throw my nuke box in the truck or my whatever vehicle I had and go do it. And it was a lot of fun. And I think everyone needs to have that experience. If that's something you want to do, you learn from all that. But now, I'll let the newer beekeepers from the bee club and let someone call them and let them go catch these swarms. I don't need to catch every swarm that's out there anymore. I'll catch them if it's easy, if it's on a limb, or if it's something that if I have time. But otherwise, I just let them go on down the list, the call list from the bee club, and go get those swarms, because I can go out and make a split in 10, 15 minutes or less. If it's maybe 15 minutes and I'm done, I don't have to drive 15, 20 minutes to go catch a swarm somewhere. But
Yep. Yeah.
anyway, so I don't know if we'll really address to grow your honeybee operation. And the interesting thing too, Keith, is that everybody has their own goals. Everybody's got a whole different way of looking at things. Speak a little bit on your thoughts as far as people. I think we as beekeepers, it's not just this way in beekeeping, but I think we tend to compare ourselves to other people sometimes. Like so and so, Jim over a few miles away, he has 100 colonies, 100 hives. I've only got 13, so I'm probably not as good a beekeeper as he is, because he's maintained. I mean, I think we tend to do that and compare. Do you see that sometimes where you're at? The people just one of the first questions people ask, and I ask it too, is how many hives you run? You know, how many
Yeah.
people always that gives that is a good question because it gives you an idea of what they're doing. But sometimes people flex a little bit. You know, you'll see them. Well, I've got
Sure.
whatever, but it's just kind of silly to do that. So, what do you think about? What could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, the how many hives you got? That's kind of like the beekeeper. How's the weather? Kind of a question. It's a good
That's true. Yeah,
way to enter a conversation. Uh, I think a lot of the times it's meant in a harmless way, but
oh
not
sure,
always. Not
sure, sure,
always. You know, sometimes there's some you see some egos, all about the numbers, but um, but yeah, the before I forget it, John mentioned something there. I saw it pass by about a mentor. You know, talking about something
sure.
good for the young beekeeper or the old beekeeper that hasn't kept bees very long. A newbie, a good mentor is worth a lot. Uh, Somebody to help you, somebody to not necessarily tell you how you got to do it, but what works for them. Um, just so you've got something to bounce ideas off of. The folks that I help will call me up with some crazy stuff they saw on YouTube, want to know if they need to do YZ. And, I'll ask them who they were watching, and they were watching, some guy down in Florida or somebody up in Canada. I'm like, they they ain't from around here. You don't. Their season ain't doing what our season's doing right now. Let's
That's
uh, let's
right.
let's let's don't do that. But um, but yeah, I agree with you as far as the um, telling folks how they should do it versus how I did it. That's that's two different things. But we know from what we saw what worked and what didn't work. Where we spent money that we shouldn't have. I totally agree about the I guess the scalability of a beekeeper. Um, I think helping other folks is kind of akin to having more hives. It's just like any other craft, whether it's pipe fitting or welding or sheet metal work, whatever. The more you do it, the better you get at it. As far as getting your hands in a hive and working with the bees. So, that means a lot. That's one reason I enjoy helping folks because, I see a lot of things in their hives. Sometimes I don't see in my hives because they're in, beekeeping is so local. You can, I've got folks that are probably 15 miles from me in a straight line, and their season is pretty different than what my season is. Just that far away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They have different forage. There's a lady that I help in the western part of the county. A lot more open farmland up there. Early in the spring, they have a lot more. You see the fields covered in purple, henbit, dead nettle, that sort of thing. Where I'm in the woods. We've got some farmland around us, but not nearly what's up in the western part of the county. So she's always at least a week ahead of me as far as the honey that she brings in. So, I have to remember that, to make sure I got her in a good place going into the flow that she has. So, it is, yeah, it's very local. But I'm meandering now. I kind of forgot the original question.
Yeah,
Looking back at
it's
it,
fine. Yeah.
but
Just we were talking about the number of hives and everything, but yeah, that it's easy to get off. Well, we could just, but I do agree with you on that point. That. So I don't know how many people in this chat agree with me, but one of the most whilst I know I don't have a lot of hair. I'm mostly bald, but I got a few hairs. But what makes me want to pull my last few hairs out is that it's just so challenging. It's so hard to figure out. But that's also one of the things that I love about it is it's just there's a new set of challenges every year to try and figure out. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. This is one thing Eric Spirit Toad says. He says Bruce loves bees. That is true. I do. I obsess about them all the time. I think a lot of people in here probably do.
mm,
Carlos from Gers, uh, right here. He's from Utah. Actually, I met him at the conference. He says my mentor is really good about giving me gentle nudges. That's a good way to put it. That's what my mentor did, and I didn't listen to him a lot of the time, but that's what he
yeah,
was doing. He was like, just do, yeah, I ought to do this, and I would be like, no, that's okay. I'm gonna do this. And then he would kind of be like, he never really said, I told you so, but he was
Mm,
thinking it because almost every time he told me something, if I'd listened to him,
mm.
it would have saved me some heartache and headache.
Yeah. Yeah, I told one of the young folks that I helped one time that it was my job to rein in his youthful exuberance. You know
Hmm.
that he was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, wanting to do all kinds of stuff, and, at that point, he really didn't know a whole lot of difference between a queen, a drone, and a worker bee. So,
Exactly.
one step at a time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you've watched my channel, I've tried almost everything, almost every kind of equipment, all
Mhm,
different ways of doing things. And I'm finally kind of realizing that, and I learned a lot and I've enjoyed it. I still am glad I did the things I did, pretty much all the different techniques I've tried, but you just kind of settle into something that kind of works for you.
mhm,
And it might be different for me. And for the guy that's a mile down the road, he might be doing something completely different and it works for him. And so, for example, just an example between the two of us, you use all mediums.
mhm,
I use deeps and mediums, which is a little more common probably, but both of our systems work. And
mhm,
I wish there was kind of a box in between the two, honestly, because deeps are too big to do honey for me. I just can't. And the mediums, that's just so many boxes. So I use deeps for my brood. And
mhm,
I mix and match them some too. Like I'll have brood boxes that are a deep and a medium brood setups, and I'll have some with the medium on the bottom, the deep above that. And then so I've got all different kinds of stuff. But my preferred management is a double deep.
mhm.
And yours is probably a triple medium. Is that correct? Is that kind of where you
Yeah,
like to be? Yeah,
yeah, my
that's the
brood box
perfect
is normally
size.
yeah, is normally 3 mediums. Now if I have a hive, like I had a couple that are extremely strong, I'll go to, 4 mediums for the brood box, and then,
Yeah.
put my supers on top of that. So,
Yeah.
one
But
thing,
man, go ahead.
one thing I was gonna add as far as is beekeeping, that this is not just for newbies or it's not about growing or anything, but it's something that I'm really enjoying that I didn't take the time to do. I'm not gonna say I didn't have time. I'm gonna say I didn't take the time to do in my younger days, um, is working with folks like kids and up at the library in different events, teaching people about bees. Um, if you like to talk about bees, then get out there and spread the wealth. Your local public libraries, I'm sure they do summer programs. They'd love to have a beekeeper come out and talk to them. You've got classes of young kids that are just amazed at bees. There's 4-H stuff going on. Um, there's all kinds of different places that you can talk about bees besides with other beekeepers. And you'll also find out the more you have to do that kind of stuff, the more studying you do, the more you learn. Then the more you talk about it, the more you're comfortable with it, and it just kind of dovetails. Um, I've found it a really fun thing to do is to I'm not going to call it public speaking because I don't consider it that fancy, but just talking to kids about bees. And it don't matter if you don't know everything there is to know about them. Nobody does, but you know a lot more than them youngins do, and you can amaze them. Get you a small um, I lost my word, observation hive where you can put some frames in and tote it up there and show it to the kids. And you probably don't want to show it the first thing because once you do that, that's all they want to do is watch that hive.
Hmm.
But um, once you get about halfway through it, if you run out of anything to talk about, you can pull that hive out from under a cover, and then you got the kids love you for the next however long you got them looking at them bugs. So
Yeah. I had I went and did a presentation a couple weeks ago at a school. I've been there a couple of years, the previous couple of years, and I have one of those man lake. It's actually a nuke box with the observation hive on top of it. The single Latin. For some reason, that board on top has warped its boat a little bit, and I pulled those sliders off. And I think the kids were either first or second graders. We were outside. Thank goodness we were outside. And the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, the bees!" Ah! They start screaming. About 8 or 10 bees escaped before I pushed that thing down, and I've just like I got to figure out how to fix that. But anyway, I wasn't too too excited that that happened. And so every group then from then on out, I just kind of, well, towards the end, I figured out just to pull the sliders up, not all the way, so they could see them without pulling them all the way out. And then the bees were locked in. But that was an event, always an adventure with bees is what, it definitely is. So,
Yeah, I had,
um,
I'm sure my wife's in there listening to this chat. She's probably laughing because I had the same thing happen. I went to talk to granddaughter's class or our granddaughter's school, and I borrowed a little observation hive friend. That, like you said, it had a couple of leaks that I didn't notice, and we were inside a like a little conference room kind of thing, and a few bees kind of snuck out of it. And my daughter was texting my wife that there's bees over at the window. There's bees over here, and I didn't even notice it at that point. But the kids didn't care, and I've bought another one now that doesn't leak, so that's not a problem now. But
yeah, I've thought about, because really the thing about that thing is it's basically a nuke
mhm,
box, and you just
yeah,
have this thing that sits on top of it.
yeah,
And really what I found is if you have too many bees in there, you can't see what's going on because they'll get on the glass and
yeah,
so what I've done and I started doing is I get one frame out of usually I go to a nuke that I have out there, or and I find the queen, and I'll actually shake some of the bees off just to make sure the queen's on there, and I'll put that one frame in that thing above. I don't even put any bees in the bottom of it, and then I just take that, and typically that helps a little bit. I don't have it totally covered with tons of bees, honestly. So,
yeah, yeah,
um, but yeah, it's anyway, that's fun. That is true. That's a lot of fun. And I
mhm,
think it's a good idea to introduce the next generation, because I think it was Dirt Rooster Randy um, was talking about, he recently did a video on, why beekeepers are quitting the business. And he said somewhere in that video that the average age of beekeepers now, I think, is between 55 and 60 years old.
yeah,
And so there are young people doing it, but not, we need to get more young people involved, starting when they're very young, like, young kids, teenagers, and their kids in their 20s. And, I think there's a time in life where, especially if you're like a young adult, where you're just so busy, and lots of times, some people just are farming people. They're naturally homesteaders, and that's just what they do. But but a lot of people just get so caught up in going to school, getting married, getting a job, that they just don't do this
mhm,
kind of thing. And then they get a little bit older, they think, hey, I'd like to get into hobbies here or there. But there's got to be a way to get more people interested. And not that everyone needs to have bees, but I think that it's going to be a difficult thing for the industry if we don't have more young people hopping in and getting involved. And so that is a concern, and a lot of people in this day and age we live in, a lot of people just, it's kind of like a quick thing, with the social media, with the shorts and the short form video and stuff that we deal with. So many people's attention span, like a lot of people, if it doesn't work the first time, they just quit. They never try it again. And so, speaking to the mentor thing, if people, and I have people come up to me all the time, they're like, hey, I sure want to get into bees. What do you think I should do? Or I say, well, here's what I recommend they do. I say, just get yourself a jacket, get yourself some, your protective gear, whatever you want to get. And if they ask for recommendations, I'll give those to them, and just hang out with me for a few times and see if you like it. And that weeds a lot of people out quick, because a lot of people, because if you actually spend, say, 150, 160 bucks or whatever it is on a jacket, and maybe a few more bucks a couple $100 to do that, then you're at least somewhat committed, you know. And
mhm,
then if you come out and you really like it, then you can go to the next step. And I've had a few people do that. And then some people, if they just want to see what it's like to get in bees, I'll just let them borrow. If I have the right size, I'll let them borrow what I have. Some people don't really want to get bees; they just want to see what it's like in a beehive, and that's a little different. But if someone says, "I want to get into bees," instead of going out and buying, you know, two big hive kits and spending the money for all the bees and the hive tool and the smoker, spending $1,000 to get bees, just come
mhm,
out, buy the jacket, come out and hang out with me and see what you think. And then if you like it, you can go ahead and spend the rest of it. If you don't, then you're out a couple $100 instead of $1,000, if that makes sense, if you're buying all your
oh, yeah,
new equipment. So that's just a thought I have, or however much you spend. Some people get cheaper equipment.
yeah,
But anyway, kind of
yeah.
back to go ahead, Keith. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was gonna say I do something very similar. If somebody approaches me, they wanna get into beekeeping, they've they see me selling honey at the market or talking to kids or whatever it is. And, the first thing I'll do, I'll invite them out to the bee yard. And I tell folks I try my best to talk them out of it. I'll tell them, the downside to it, it's expensive. It's hot in the summer, you're going to lose bees. But then, like you say, I'll let them borrow you a jacket or throw on a veil and a coat or something, and we'll go out and get in some hives, just to make sure that they don't freak out when you open up a box with 50,000 bees in it, and they go running for home. But
Right.
um, but yeah, just ease them into it, and like you say, once you can, making sure they understand, like you say, $1,000 for that first couple of hives, that's very reasonable, as far as what they're going to have invested in it. It's not a cheap hobby by any means. And if you spend $1,000 and you don't like it, then there's, other than selling whatever it is you bought, there's not a whole lot of stuff you can do with a bee jacket and a few wooden boxes. But
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, and there's, gosh, we could do a whole other video on all that, but we have another person that he reached out to me. I had reached out to him earlier as well, and he saw the message from me, and so he's going to hop in here for the next few minutes. And he looks like he's actually out in the bee yard. Here he is, right here. We got
Hey
Todd.
guys.
Hey Todd.
How you doing, Todd? What you up to this afternoon?
Well, I skedaddled the office and went home and changed, and now I have to do some queen checks. So I ran out here as fast as I can because there's a storm coming. So I have to open up a builder and see how many cells were accepted. So
Yeah.
so I can start planning.
So real quick, Todd, for those who may not know who you are, tell us where you're at, who you are, and then we'll let you get back to work as soon as you need to. But tell us kind of a little bit about yourself. This is Todd from Loma Vista Bee Company out in California.
Yep. I'm in Clovis, California, Central California, almost geographically in the center of California. As Bruce said, I own and operate Loma Vista Bee Company, and I'm a sideliner. I was trying to kind of pump it up a little bit more last year, but the virus nailed me really bad. So right now I'm stuck at 49, I think it is. Wow. I've got some right here. I don't know if you could see them, but
oh yeah, we got them.
So so yeah, just a sideliner. I'm getting more into honey sales via not farmers market, but more events. I have an event called Country Roots in 2 weeks, so I have all of my stuff, all of my inventory ready, my tables, canopy, all that stuff. So that's kind of what I'm about. I'm getting more and more into being self-sufficient. So I'm making my own brew, or not brew. I'm not making brew. My queens. I've got a couple different varieties here. I just recently, about a month and a half ago, got some last shot queens out of the Hawaiian Queen Company, and luckily I did that before the floods started affecting them, which I heard they're kind of been pushed back a ways. So I have those, and then I'm talking to Eddie down in Louisiana. That's in the I guess the B Lab program with the BSH line that's coming out of the B Lab there in Baton Rouge. Frank Rakovich is the one that's I think overseeing the program. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to be getting some of those. I've had VHS before via Mark Miller, and yeah, they worked out great. I still have some of those genes in my yard right now. That's kind of about it. I'm out of boxes, so if anybody feels sorry for me, please send me some boxes.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
The topic tonight is actually growing a honeybee operation to meet your beekeeping goals, and that is a big problem you can run into is if you split too much, and then all of a sudden must have some bees getting after you.
Yeah, I've got a mean box somewhere in here.
Yeah, but if you're trying to grow and you say you have 20 20 hives and you try to split them all and you have 40, then you got to buy 40 boxes when you need to add super to all of them. And so it grows exponentially. So you got to be careful.
It does.
And
Yeah, you
so
have to be real careful.
anyway, but
I
yeah,
heard. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I heard Keith talking earlier about when he was driving up to I forgot the bee supply company, but he was buying all kinds of woodenware and talking about expense, and he's 100% correct. Before you know it, you're growing out of your pocket all of a sudden. So
It can
I try to
happen.
grow organically. So everything I buy is what I sold last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to do. And then, I have an S corp set up. So I have some, some tax favors going my way and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I
that's it.
actually, I kind of did the same. I was started on that topic. I think I kind of squirreled it. I kind of like a squirrel over here, but I didn't finish it. But yeah, I started off. I went into, I bought my first few colonies and the equipment, and then I've tried to kind of stay in the black the whole time, and it's kind of worked for me. It's taken several years to get there, but now the bees are making enough to more than pay for any equipment I need, and I'm actually
Hmm.
able to buy some nicer equipment now. It used to be I'd build my own stuff or buy the cheapest stuff I could find, and now I'm actually able to afford some of the nice stuff from Greg and everything that'll last for many years. And so you hear the term "buy once, cry once." I tend to
Yeah.
agree with that. I agree with that. However, I think that you need to buy once, cry once within your budget and what you actually have available. I'm not one to go into a lot of debt. Not saying I would never do that if we really try to go completely commercial. I really don't want to. But the honey that
Yeah.
we've made and sold has got us a pretty good little nest egg in the account. And so if we continue to grow it,
Hmm.
maybe someday I can build a nice honey house or get some nicer, really ramp it up to where it's more of a commercial grade without having to go into a bunch of debt. But it's
Oh yeah.
so easy and so tempting because you see how once you get the hang of it, you see the potential of how fast you can grow
Hmm.
and how much you could come in. But one bag year, kind of like what you mentioned, Todd, you had last year, it can
Yeah.
totally it can blow. It's just farming, really. You can have
Yeah.
a bad year weather wise, you can have a disease, get a bad bunch of queens, whatever it is, and it can kind of put you under, man. So you
Yeah.
gotta kind of, it's best, I think, just to kind of grow organically. Everybody doesn't have that opinion of it, but that's kind of how I try to do
Hmm.
things both in my normal life and in the bees, is just let the bees pay for themselves. And then
Yeah.
we've started to gain a little traction the last couple of years. It could all be messed up, but if I lost every single bee I have and all my boxes burned up, I still have some money in the bank,
Hmm.
so we're kind of
Hmm.
working, we kind of have a little bit of money stashed to be able to do that.
Hmm.
We're not, of course, I'd like it to become my second career here in the next couple of years. And so going to ramp it up even more then. But, if assuming my health holds out, I'm 58. So if my health holds out, that's the thing I worry too about how many more years can I do the physical work I'm doing now.
Yeah.
That worries me a little bit as well.
You know, I I talked to Bruno at Nobby about the hive lifter. I'm I'm really thinking about that, but my problem is that my pallets are U clipped and not W clipped, and so I can't get that arm inside or in between the boxes. So what I'll probably end up doing is I'll probably cut my pallets in half and make them two ways, and then see if I can. Watch out. Um,
Just get you a skid steer. Get you a,
yeah. Well, but so I don't know if I want to get a skid steer, but if I get something like a hive lifter, and if I can grab the boxes sideways instead of from the front or the back, with the handholds on the sides, um, I'll do it that way. But I I'm like you. I'm getting up in age, and I like my back, and my back likes me right now sometimes, and sometimes when it's hot out here and
mhm,
throwing honey boxes onto the back of my truck, it starts barking at me and telling me it's time to
yeah.
stop, even after a couple boxes. So
Now I have a feeling
it's
we're all about the same age. Late 50s. I mean, am I wrong about that or anyway?
um
But
I graduated in 1983. Let's just say that from high
Okay,
school.
so
So
you're like right there with me.
I've got a, and I've got a mean little booger flying around my face.
Keith, you've retired. Are you about our age, or maybe just a couple years
No, I
older?
graduated in '79. I'll be 65
Okay,
in
yeah,
Ah,
August.
yeah.
I'm the
see, I
old
was a
guy.
So
freshman.
so the point is, none of us are getting younger, and
Yeah.
so that it's important. I think is that one reason, Keith, that you like the mediums, or have you just always used mediums?
I've just always used them. Yeah, that didn't have anything to do with it early on. When I bought my first nuke, the guy had mediums and deep nukes. And he just said, some people just go with mediums. And I did. And I've got no good reason for doing it. That's just the path I went down and I've stayed on it. So,
Well, it does make it easy. Everything's interchangeable for
yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Todd, as far as advice, someone getting into it, we've already talked about a few things. I'm not sure how much of the chat you've heard, but what would you tell people if they came up to you and said, "Hey, I'd like to get into bees," and what do you recommend I do?
Um, First thing I would say is read whatever you can, get your hands on whatever you can to read about bees. The Hive and the Honeybee, I read that thing 4 times, and it's like as thick as an encyclopedia. I did skip some chapters like the honey house and stuff like that, but the basic techniques are all in there. But one thing that I kind of preach now to the beginners in my club is learn bee math. Bee math is so important. You use it every day. When I first started, I was like, "Ah, I don't need to know that stuff. I don't care." But when you need to look at a frame and see how old that brood is, and when you have to do something with it, if it fits in that timeline, you know exactly what to do. So bee math is critical. That's
When you say
that's
bee
my number
math,
one thing.
you say
Yeah,
like by bee math you mean like I've got 3 frames of brood and 14 days I'm going to have this many bees or this many
correct.
frames, and just kind of have
Yeah,
the timing and everything like that.
correct. Yeah,
That makes
the
sense.
21 days for a worker, 24 for a drone, 16 for a queen, nine
Yep,
day
yep,
around 8 or 9 days are capped. So things like that. Yeah,
absolutely. That
yeah,
helps you plan for the future, both
yeah,
when the bees are on the increase and when they're on the decrease.
yeah,
Then when you combine that
yeah.
with all the environmental factors, and like Keith was talking about earlier, even within the same county you can have, or the same area you
Hmm.
can have completely different biomes, so to speak. I mean,
Yep.
I've got bee yards. I call it my northern route and my southern route. They're probably about 20 miles apart, I would guess, give or take 20, 25 miles apart. And I have bee yards that might even be just 4 or 5 miles apart, and they are just different. There's something different about
Hmm.
them. It depends on the shade, the trees in the area. Um,
Yeah.
it's just crazy how there can be a difference even in the same, just really close geographical area. Just down the
Hmm.
road a couple of miles, it can be totally different. And
Hmm.
so that's once again, that's part of the frustration of beekeeping. Also, one thing that's really cool about it is trying to figure all that stuff out. But it's very complex, and so I think having a mentor is a good idea. But I also think having a mentor that keeps bees alive is important too, because I do know that some people will have bees for a year or two, and they really, they're trying to teach people that are new into it, and many times I think, and I'm not everyone's like this. I hope I wasn't like this, but maybe I was a little bit. But you know, when you're a beekeeper for 2 or 3 years and you've gotten a few bees through winter, I thought I kind of knew everything. That's why I kind of told my mentor, I'm going to try it this way and not what you told me. And then I paid the price for that. So I think it's best if you can to try to find someone that's kind of established, that's been keeping bees alive for a while, and learn from
Yeah.
them. And then also, I think a good mentor will give you freedom to choose, teach his techniques, but also give you freedom to kind of rock and roll with what you find that works out for you too, and realize that everyone doesn't have to do it the same way.
Yeah.
And the other
Oh
thing
yeah.
is, what do you guys think? I mean, obviously, we're all three of us are on YouTube. We all have channels, and we all three are in different parts of the country. And so a lot of beekeeping is learned through social media and YouTube.
Hmm.
What are
Hmm.
your thoughts on that? What types of, Keith, we'll start with you. What types of things will you caution people of when it comes to learning through any type of source, whether it be mentors, YouTube, social media, or even books? What kind of caution will you give to people?
Well, the first thing I mentioned it a little bit earlier, make sure the advice that you're taking in at least the same hemisphere you are.
Yeah.
I had I had a I had a newbie one time that was watching a beekeeper out of Australia, and here we are. It's not the dead of winter, but it's getting cold, and they're wanting to know about adding boxes and doing stuff, and I'm like, wait, who are you watching? But yeah, that's one thing that's great about YouTube, and that's one thing you do have to be careful with. We learn a lot from each other. What's going on in the South, what's going on in California, what's going on up in Canada. We got New Zealand popping in here. We got Richard Noel over in France. You got all these people all over the place, and it's so fun to learn what's going on there, how they do things different, and how it's a lot the same is what we have. So, so be aware of the geographic area of the person that you might be trying to mimic a bit. Some of it after that, though, gets kind of tough. If you got a newbie watching YouTube that don't know much of anything, how do they know that this guy isn't shooting a line of stuff and he don't know what he's talking about, or she?
Sure.
Maybe that's where a mentor helps again, because I ask my folks, if they watch YouTube, and if they do, then I'll give them a list of YouTube channels that I like, that I think they can trust. But if you don't have that, that's a tough one. What do you think, Todd?
Yeah, I think knowing who you're listening to, you have to vet them, so to speak. Um, and that's very true with a mentor. So you're right, get a mentor in your area. Watch people on YouTube that are in your area. Um, just learn your local knowledge first and then expand later if you want to. You might want to go, some people have bees in Georgia and then they go down into Florida. Well, they don't do that overnight. They have to learn how they keep their bees in their area, and then they kind of build some knowledge that way, and then go learn about another local area or another area, and talk to people down there. So it's very important to know who you're watching, listening to, stuff like that. And that's, again, that's why I think reading a book like Hive and the Honeybee, excuse me, is so important, because that's knowledge that's been, you know, tried and true for many, many, many years. And the tips and methods that they have in that book are just an excellent, excellent source.
Yeah, I think you got to take anything with a grain of salt. I think that the
Mm,
best way to learn about bees is to get in the bees. Let the
yeah,
bees teach you.
do it.
And
Yeah.
so, some of these comments are pretty funny in here. But let's see right here. What Eric actually had a really good. What did he say here? Eric said, and this is so true with anything, whether it be sports, beekeeping, whatever. Eric Spirit of Toad says, understand the fundamentals,
Hmm.
and that's so important. I think this is something like I believe that you can learn fundamentals from anyone, almost anywhere in the world. Like you got to get for someone in Australia that's a solid beekeeper, they're going to use the correct fundamentals. The difference is
Yeah.
all the different variables that go into those fundamentals. Every colony has a queen, has workers, has drones, has makes wax, makes honey,
Hmm.
and they all do it. They just do it a certain way. And obviously, there's so many variations between breeds of bees, but the basics are the same.
Yeah.
But from that point on, learn the fundamentals first and build on that foundation, and then you just have to kind of go with it. But I think you have to take anything you see on YouTube, including myself. I mean, I've done videos before where I was convinced that I was doing the right thing, and it has come back to bite me. And then I come back and make a video saying, "Hey, look, I was wrong." But what if someone just saw that first video and didn't see the follow up video? Then they might have done what I did, thinking that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that's when we put ourselves out there, all of us, when we do that, there's a risk to that. And so you have to take what people say on YouTube as a grain of salt. I had a YouTube channel, I think it was my second year of beekeeping. And I wasn't necessarily telling people as coming across as an expert. It's always been kind of like a vlog, but if you watch my channel, you can kind of see my journey. Hopefully there were some fundamentals in there, but the main purpose of my channel historically has not been, hey, learn from me and be like me. It's been more like, let me show you what I'm doing and teach you certain principles of what's working for me. And then you go do your own thing. I know Mike Berry's the same way. I know each of you guys is the same way. And so if you see a beekeeper on YouTube that's coming from a position of authority and they're telling you it's the only way to do this and that any way, to me, that's the person to run away from, because there is no just one way to do it. We all have opinions. You say here that you've heard the quote. It goes something like, if you ask 5 beekeepers a question, you get 10 different answers, or all the variations of that. That's very true. And so how can you find some one person on YouTube that's telling you to do it this way and say that's the only way to do it? It's never true. And so we all have opinions, but I'm still learning. I still learn every time I get in the hive. I still learn. And so I think it's important that you can glean from everyone on YouTube. I think it's a good thing to watch YouTube videos, but you also have to glean mostly, more than anything, from your bees. You have to get the bees, get in the hive, apply the things you learned through the books and through the mentor and through the YouTube videos. And sometimes it's going to fail. Sometimes what someone did in Canada is not going to work in Alabama or Florida, and vice versa. But you learn that, and then you just move on, and you realize that person wasn't trying to teach you wrong. It was just different there, and maybe they did it wrong, but maybe it's just not going to work for you. I see Lisa in here. Yeah, okay. I see Lisa on here, and Lisa's a friend of mine from right here in Ozark, and she and I do things similar, but we do some things different, just right here 20 miles apart. And so it's just such a beautiful thing, this beekeeping thing. The most beautiful part of all of it, though, is the actual bees themselves and the hives, and the community that's formed around that with all of us has just been phenomenal. All the people, we got 129 people right now in the chat watching this thing, and it still blows me away that there is this community here. But it's amazing how we've been doing the stream team for like over 4 years now, and it's still going pretty strong. We still have a pretty good following, and all you guys all do live streams as well. Both of you do some here or there, and you guys are hopping on and people are watching, and it's just, the community is phenomenal. But anyway, we kind of got off on a little tangent there. So I hope that this has helped somebody, this chat tonight, especially if you're new into beekeeping, or maybe it's given someone who's more established a little bit of some things to think about. All I know is, in my case, kind of like you, Todd, and it sounds like you a little bit, Keith, as well. I've just tried to grow organically and stay within my budget. I didn't hop into this thing as a commercial operation from the beginning. To me, it was a hobby that's grown into a sidelining operation, and it is a business for me now.
Yeah.
That does make some money. And whenever someone says, you hear the jokes about, if you want to make $1 million, spend $2 million or whatever it is, whatever that crazy thing is. I'm like, I have not found that to be the case. I think there are tremendous opportunities to make some money doing bees, whether it be a little bit of pocket change for fun things you want to do, or whether it be to turn into a real business. There's so many different ways to do it. In some areas, it's saturated with honey. Maybe honey's not the way to go, but maybe you could sell bees, and you got to kind of figure out what works for you. And I've been blessed with I've been blessed with some growth, and I hope it continues on. Really, all I can say is that I've been blessed. It hasn't been, I've worked hard, but it hasn't been anything I've done. It's been, it's been a culmination of a lot of different things between the effort I've put in, along with, the man up, with God, I believe, and with the bees that have responded, and with the lessons I've learned the hard way. Hopefully I've utilized those and incorporated those into what I do in the future to have more success. Would you guys kind of agree if you had similar situations or experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no doubt. The like I said earlier, I didn't get into this early on to make any money off of it. I just wanted to have some bees, and then one thing led to another, and I figured out kind of how to do it, and it grew, and I started making more honey than I could sell on Facebook. Started doing the farmers markets, and then I needed more farmers markets to sell what I made, and pretty soon it's a pretty nice little retirement income.
Yep, that helps.
That I really enjoy doing. That's the trick to it.
Exactly.
It's the only, I don't like to call beekeeping a hobby. I don't think that's the right word. But it's the only thing I've done like this that wasn't a money pit. I've messed with old farmers, and
Yeah. Oh
Yes.
yeah.
stereos and musical equipment and all kinds of stuff, and you might as well, you're just throwing money in a hole.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
you
how
know,
most
like
hobbies
you say,
are.
Bruce, with bees, if you ease into it, if you pay attention to your cash flow, you gain knowledge, you gain experience, you grow wisely. Um, you can make some money at it. Um,
Yeah.
it is
Oh
Really.
like
yeah.
farming. You can have, just like farming, you can have a bunch of corn standing up tall or tobacco or soybeans or whatever, and a storm come through and just wipe it out. Honeybees
Mhm.
are no different.
Yeah.
Right now, I think my bees are set up nicely. They're making honey. Everything's going good, but it could start raining and rain just right. And a lot of folks had that last year. It rained a lot of the flow out for many folks, and they didn't make nearly as much honey as they usually do. Anything they did everything right. Um,
That's right.
but it just didn't work. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Well, want to go through here and recognize a few folks. I appreciate. I think we're. Let's see. We got Grammy. Appreciate the super sticker there, Grammy. Appreciate that. Thanks for checking in tonight. Grammy's a good friend of mine. We try to help each other out a little bit here or there. She's just right here in the same community. She's awesome. I don't know if you've met Grammy or not, but I know you have, Keith. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
Todd, you've met her, haven't you? She's
I
awesome.
met her at the show this year. Yeah. Yeah. She's awesome. Yeah.
We got
And she has
Feathers
some good
Flowers.
jam.
Yeah, she does. She makes good everything, and she is as southern as they come, which is awesome.
Yeah.
and her
Feathers
business
Flowers. What's that?
looks like her business is off to a good start too.
Oh
That's
yeah.
great.
Shall I tell you what? She works super hard too. Yeah,
Mhm.
she just opened up a equipment store down here, not far from here.
Mhm.
And she also sells a lot of really good products as far as like jams and different types of honeys and different products from the hive, lotions, potions, and everything out there. She's
Mhm.
got it going on. So,
Mhm.
Feathers Flowers, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Thanks for checking in tonight and being a part of the stream. Oh, we got a super chat from Ken Lebo. He says, that's Ken Lebowitz over in Andalusia, Alabama. Become a mentor for vets and first responders at Highs for Heroes website. He is the Alabama rep for um, the Highs for Heroes, and Ken's a great guy. He really is. He's just a good dude, and he's doing a lot of good things out there. Ken's had
Yeah,
some heartache in his life this past year, but he just keeps plugging on. I'm proud of him. He's just a great man. He's just a good
I
dude.
picked up another newbie this week. Hives for
Yeah.
Heroes guy.
I've tried to do it. I've got a couple of mentees, but one of them lives a little bit too far away. And I try to help, but it's just I've had a hard time with my operation with the colonies I got.
Yeah,
And the other fella got started last year a little bit. He got started maybe a little bit, kind of jumped in all guns a blazing, and then I think he's going to get back into it. I'm trying to work with them both, but if I can't personally help, I try to make sure someone's helping. Like the one lady, I think Lisa's actually going to help me out with something going on, and lady's kind of in a bind, and so Lisa knows her, and Lisa's also participates very heavily in the Hives for Heroes. She believes in that, and so first responders, I think, also applies to medical and EMS type people, and so Lisa is, I guess I technically in that category as well, but Lisa's just awesome with that. So gonna kind of sum things up a little bit here. Todd, tell me about kind of what you got coming up in the next few days. Kind of once again, what's your channel, how so people can find you, and what you got coming up in the next few days.
My channel is lomavistabeecompany.com. Well, that's my website. My channel is at Loma Vista Beeco at YouTube, whatever it is. Same with Instagram and then Facebook. Um, Next couple of days, really nothing. I'm kind of in a holding pattern. Orange is just finished. What's funny about this, and you were talking about this earlier, knowing your surroundings. This time of the year is usually when oranges start, and oranges have already finished. And I was saying it, earlier this year that I think they're 2 or 3 weeks early, and they are. Um, so you have to always be prepared for that. So that kind of threw a monkey wrench into my plans because there's nectar that's curing in the hives or on the hives right now, and I wasn't expecting to pull that off right away, but I'm going to have to start pulling it off because privet is. I just noticed privet today. that's popping up. So, um, uh, always Mother Nature is a mad scientist, what I like to say, and she'll throw a curveball at you any chance she gets, and that's okay. You just have to go with the flow. What I have going on right now, not much. Like I said, just kind of in a holding pattern. Got some shows coming up soon. And did you guys see my creation? I accidentally made up. I put it on Facebook.
I'm not
Actually, I
sure.
put it on YouTube.
I don't
It's
either.
it, it's summer honey layered with creamed honey.
Hmm.
I took some pictures of it. Yeah, it's up on my channel, and then
Huh.
on the No Life Beekeepers channel on Facebook.
All right, well,
So
go check it out, everybody, over at
yeah,
Inter-Distant Bee Company.
I did it by accident, so it's kind of weird. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but who knows? Maybe it's the newest thing. I don't know. But anyway,
Hey,
that's it.
either one of you guys try that lanternfly honey up in Louisville? That
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah,
yeah,
Speaking
that
of
was
something
some
that's
wild stuff.
different, yeah, it was weird.
it's different. Um,
All right, so Keith, what you got coming up over the next few days?
well, I've got a video coming out in the morning where I started inspecting and tilting boxes looking for swarm cells. The way I manage this time of year, trying to keep my hives big and keep them from swarming, I end up going into the hives, gosh, at least every 5 to 7 days. So that's where I'm at right now. Once the flow gets going good, it seems to squelch the swarm tendency a bit, and that helps me out. But yeah, right now I'm just doing a lot of brood management, trying to keep the hives big and keep them in the box. So make sure they got plenty of supers on board, and hopefully we'll be extracting some honey. Last year it was April 21st.
Hmm.
I think I extracted 300 pounds that first one. So hoping for that again this year, but we'll see. Um, but I'll put a little shameless plug in here. I've also got the Thursday night bee chat, and
Oh,
Todd
Yes, sir.
also has that too
yep.
on
Yep.
certain Thursdays of the month. Um,
Yeah.
Every other Thursday. So not
okay,
tomorrow.
So when's your next one, Paul or Todd? When's your next one, and what time is it?
Yeah. April 9th, I think is, or whatever next Thursday is. I think it's
Okay.
April 9th.
yeah, you had it
It
last
is.
Thursday.
We gear it towards Brian Zavada and I are doing it. Brian's
Mhm.
with Flower Street Farms, and what we're trying to do is get the West Coast people kind of perked up. Like you guys on the East Coast, you got it. You've got it all planned out as far as YouTube lives and stuff. So
Yeah,
we're trying to get that going on this side of the country. A lot of people don't even know about a lot of YouTube channels. They don't even know about Nobby. They only think there's two where suppliers in town, Daydan or Man Lake, and that's it. There's so much out there that they don't know. So every other Thursday we try it. So this month it'll be April 9th and April 23rd. And
Awesome.
and it's next Thursday is on Flower Street Farm Bees channel, and
Okay.
then the next one would be on mine. We alternate every Tuesday.
What time do you kick that
Oh,
thing off?
so it's bad for you guys on the East Coast. We kick it off at right after Key's show, which is what
10,
10:30,
10
ten
o'clock.
thirty, or 10 o'clock. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So 7 o'clock here, West
Okay.
Coast time. Yeah,
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 9 o'clock Central, which is where I'm at.
yeah.
yeah.
You guys
Oh,
start yours
you're
at
in Central, Bruce?
we are right on the line. The Chattahoochee
Okay.
River is the dividing line, and we're just
Oh,
west of it. Yes, so we're central, yeah.
okay.
But we are
Okay.
just literally 30 miles away from Eastern time zone. So,
Okay. Okay.
Keith, you guys kick yours off at 7:30 Eastern or 8:30 Eastern.
8:30 Eastern.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Which
the
is
nights that Todd and Brian are on, we'll cut it off at 10
okay.
and point folks to go check out their channel and
Yeah.
or their show. And
That's
the other
awesome.
nights we'll run a little bit later than that. We might go 8:30 to 10:30, something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And check them out, guys. They're doing a great job. As far as the stream team, well, I think it's going to be on Greg's channel next week. Greg is at a super busy time of the year with his operation, obviously commercial. And Brian their family has a new addition. He has a little grandbaby now, so I think that's kind of what
Ah,
he's involved with right now. And And so that both of those are very legitimate and great reasons not to be on tonight. But as far as I know, we're going to continue to try and roll on Wednesday nights. And if there happens to be a week where we don't get it, that doesn't mean we're going away. We just may, like last week, we weren't able to go on, but here we are this week. And typically, if one of us if one or both of us can't make it, either the one that's left will hop on and maybe get a guest or two. So we try to have it on one of our channels almost every Wednesday night, but every once in a while we miss it. But typically we have the stream team every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. That'd be 6 o'clock. Let's see, 5 o'clock out there on the West Coast. And we try to do that every week if we can. And we haven't missed very many. I doubt if we've missed 10 weeks, 10 Wednesday nights in the last 4 years. Maybe we have. It's doubtful. I mean, maybe consider Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that, but we've even done it on the Wednesday before those nights before. So typically we're on, but every once in a while we don't make it on. But if we don't shoot us. Don't get mad with us. We'll be back the next week, hopefully. At least that's the plan for now.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of close. I had an experience, and it's going to be a little sentimental here. Excuse me a sec. A little tickle in my throat, but I got a new client. A guy, this guy that's, they're well off, well to do. I'm not far from here, and they've hired me to put bees on their place. I don't know if I'll be shooting videos there. If I do, I probably won't identify where it is because it's a private thing up there. It's a private place. But I was out there when we made those nukes up a few weeks ago when Greg was here a little over a month ago. 16 of those nukes went to that client, and I got them all in the hives. Got them all. Took the nukes up. Got the Endura Hive wax tip boxes from Greg. Put them all in there, and the guy I'm working with, he was there, and the land manager was there. I think that's what his job is. But they helped me a little bit. Went back up there this past Thursday afternoon. I got off work a little bit early. Went up there, and then the hives are doing well. That's not the point I want to make. The point is that I want to make is that there is no way that these bees, that there's not, in my opinion, that there's not something divine about these bugs in the box. I've finished up. I was kind of, I think, about to wrap it up, and I started watching the bees, and I actually put a little short, I think, on my YouTube channel. I know I made a reel out of it where the bees are just kind of walking around and they're just doing their thing. And, this is going to kind of, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but a brand new hive of bees that's not established, it's just got all brand new boxes, brand new foundation, brand new nuke. Everything is new in that colony. It just looks clean. You know what I'm saying? It looks real clean and nice. It's no old black comb, nothing like that, unless it's maybe from the frames from the nuke. But anyway, so I just remember looking in there and thinking, man, this is so cool. And then do you guys notice the smell, like when you have a brand new fresh hive like that, a really happy hive that's growing?
Yeah.
Like it was literally almost like sniffing a drug. I smelled it. It smelled so good. And then I just like put my nose down there, and I had my veil on and everything. I was like, I breathed in, and it was almost like a high, something about it was just such a cool, neat thing. And I love walking into a bee yard when they're really busy and active. It's not so great in the wintertime but in the spring, when things start coming in, when they're growing and they're happy, and you have that pheromone going on, plus the nectar coming in.
Oh yeah.
There's just nothing like it. And I hope, people who can't, if all you do is watch videos and you never have bees and you never have a successful beehive, or you never experience the smells and the actual feel of being in it, it's such an amazing thing. It is very addictive, and it was such a wonderful thing. It just brought to mind again, just watching the bees work and communicate and fan their wings, and just everything they do is just incredible to me, and I just love it. And Eric earlier said Bruce loves bees, and that's true. I do. I absolutely love this thing that we're involved with. These bugs in a box, they've been so good to me. It is therapy for me. So anyway, I guess with that, I think we'll sign off next Wednesday night, same place. I think we're actually going to be on Greg's channel, either Greg or Brian's channel, I would imagine. But we do have a YouTube or a Facebook page, Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. You can look for updates on there, and then of course on each of our channels as well. But it's usually on one of our 3 channels on Wednesday nights: Nature's Image Farm, Castle Hives, or here at Bruce's Bees. But I just like to say and appreciate you guys coming on tonight. Thanks for all the comments. We ended up with, I think we had 140 plus people in here. Maybe, I don't know if we hit 150, maybe we did tonight, which is incredible for such a last minute episode we put up here. Appreciate all you guys being on here. And like Greg always says, he usually He usually does the outro here, but I just encourage everyone to be the lighthouse and be the change you'd like to see in this world. And thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate everybody.
See y'all later.
See you later.